Do you know what? I always look forward to these automatic promotion chats because we have them every 3 weeks or so, and yet each time I still don't know quite which way it's going to turn because these four teams, other than the odd drop points, they've been pretty relentless, haven't they? And Leeds United, of course, reaffirming their automatic promotion credentials at the weekend with a 7-0 thumping of Cardiff City, really putting them to the sword. A bit something we've not always seen from Leeds United, normally only scoring 3s or 4s. So finally got to a 7 Leeds United this weekend. Sheffield United with a more modest 1-0 victory at Derby, but certainly keeping up the pace with their two new additions, Tom Cannon and Ben Brereton Diaz. Burnley, of course, the clean sheet machine, 9 goals conceded all season in 30 games is a phenomenal defensive record, and they'll be looking to maintain that to the end, while Sunderland, of course, play Middlesbrough away this evening. So plenty to discuss then on this Championship podcast. Yes, welcome along to this Championship podcast here on EFL Debate. You can do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify. That would certainly help us out a lot. But for now, I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host, Oli Mann, from the Sheff United Way. And Oli, good evening. Thanks for joining me as always. Great to have you on. I think we've not done this for a couple of weeks now, so been getting withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah, it's been weird. It's been I've missed a couple in a row. I was a bit like, what's happening to me? Is he even going to call me his co-host anymore after I've slacked off for as long as I have? But no, great to be back. Obviously, there's a few bits going on the last couple of weeks at work and with other bits. So yeah, I ended up getting stuck behind, but very, very glad to be back. And obviously talking about the part of the table that interests me the most, shall we say.
Yeah, certainly is. I mean, have you been able to enjoy the thrill of the automatic promotion race in the Championship at all? Or is it just because, you're a fan and you've got skin in the game, it's just very difficult to really enjoy it?
Yeah, it's enjoying it from a different perspective, I think, because obviously, not to sound too arrogant, United win most weeks. Like every week, I feel like I'm going to watch football, United win. And so it's something really enjoyable about that. I think after last season and all the getting battered every week and all of the losing, it feels so much better to go to football optimistic and think, yeah, I think we'll win today. And, for the most part, they have done. And so that's been a really great feeling. It's been really enjoyable season. It's been cathartic, sort of getting over all of that sort of past trauma. So, yeah, I've enjoyed it from a different perspective. I can't enjoy watching Leeds. I think that's the biggest crime in all of this, is that I sit and watch Leeds and of course they're brilliant. Oh, of course they've scored a 7th. Oh, God. Where everybody else can enjoy how good they are, because we are talking about one of the teams in the division who, over the last few years, these did hold their weight against anyone. They're such a good side. They're so strong going forward, so exciting to watch. Yeah, it's a shame that I'm not able to enjoy that side of it the same way I did last year, but I can't say I'm not enjoying the season because, yeah, it's just been brilliant to be a United fan at the minute.
Yeah, certainly is. In terms of this automatic promotion race then, Ollie, how are you looking at it? I mean, are we talking about Leeds? Because you've been very bullish about Leeds all season, and I think I have as well. Are we veering closer to a stage where it's going to be a case of 1 from 3?
I think so. I think, you look at the league table, and actually, United fans, we have to point this out every time we open our mouths. God forbid we let this go unsaid. We've earned as many points on the pitch as Leeds this season. As good as they are, as fantastic as they've been to watch, they haven't blown everybody else out of the league. United and Leeds have both earned 63 points from 30 games, an incredible record. And it's insane to see how well both teams have done. I do think it's Leeds +1, though, because I look at them, and the fact is they have got 2 more points than United. We can talk about points earned or whatever. Leeds have got 2 more points. They're clear at the top of the league. They're starting to build a gap. It's 5 points above Burnley. And I think looking at the squads, looking at the performances, looking at the form, Leeds are just there. And they're always going to be there. So I think we're getting quite close to Leeds +1. I've been bullish. I said in our half-season prediction, I said Leeds will win the league by 10+ points. I still stand by that. I still think that when United, Burnley, Sunderland slip up, Leeds will take a lot of points from these next 16 games. If they end up on something less than, I think their going rate is 96. And so that's where I think teams have got to be if they're going to finish above Leeds. And I don't think any of the others will be able to get anywhere near that.
The one sort of rebuttal to that on Leeds would be they've got coming up, they've got 5 promotion contenders of different varieties, of different sort of descriptions in a row, because they've got Coventry away, who are an informed playoff contender. Watford away, technically Watford are in the playoff equation, although they are out of form at the moment. They've got Sunderland at home, and they've got Sheffield United away, followed by West Brom at home. So that's 3 away fixtures, which in those next 5, and all of them are against teams that will have some sort of Premier League aspirations.
Yeah, and all of them midweek under the lights. You know, it's Coventry away on a Wednesday night, it's Watford away on a Tuesday night, they've got United away on a Monday night. They're all a different question being asked of them. They're going to be going away to teams where the atmosphere is just a little bit higher, where the travel, the setup, the prep has all just been a little bit disjointed. You know, there's a reason teams like to play on Saturday at 3:00. And it's not just because that's best for the fans, because I feel really sorry for Leeds as fans looking at some of these fixtures, looking at how they're going to have to play these games, because none of those are going to be easy to get back from. But also, they're going to be really tough. But I think after they get through that, I think I'd love Frank Lampard to do us a favour. I'd love him. You know, Coventry are getting better. I still think, you know, those 5 games we've listed, if you told me Leeds got less than 10 points, I'd probably be shocked. I think there's enough in this Leeds squad that they'll expect to win every game that they're playing. I think the odds will generally always have Leeds as the favourites. I think if you offered it them now, the only game I think they'll lose is potentially at Bramall Lane. I think that's the game. I think all the others, because they're at home against Sunderland, I'd expect them to win that. Sunderland are a great team. I'm not disrespecting them, but I would expect Leeds to win all the games at Ellen Road. Whoever they play at Ellen Road, I'll back Leeds to beat them. So then you're looking at Coventry and Watford away. Leeds are a step above Coventry. It's a horrible fixture, but they're a step above. Watford's home form has fallen off a cliff since the new year. So again, now with that, you look at that game a little bit differently to how you looked at it a month ago. You're now saying, I think they're there to be shot at. So suddenly it does, you know, if they can beat United at Bramall Lane, the gap might already be insurmountable by that point. I think we'll be trying to just keep them in check. Never mind trying to actually overtake them come that game. But it's it is a horrible run of fixtures. I just think there's enough in that squad that they'll win them.
Yeah, I think that there's a possibility that with the goalkeeping situation, because Meslier, to be fair to him, has kept a few clean sheets, 4 clean sheets in a row, but he hasn't really been tested so much in those games either. But I'm just wondering with those tougher fixtures whether Meslier's maybe not recruiting another goalkeeper in January is going to come back to bite Daniel Farker, and whether that could be an issue for Leeds.
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? I cannot get my head around that. Just doesn't make any sense to me.
And that's the one thing that gives me a little bit of doubt about Leeds, because I think the fact that they've scored 7 against Cardiff, it's difficult to maybe question the thing that they need another striker, because actually they've shown they can spread the goals around very nicely. I mean, if it is Leeds and +1, Burnley dropped points at the weekend. Is that something that you're sort of relieved about from a Sheffield United point of view? Because it is 6 goals in their last 7, and 5 of them actually came at home park. So,
one game.
Yeah, I know. So it shows that Burnley do have their struggles going forward.
It does, and that does give me a lot of hope, to be honest. I think when we played Friday night. So we played Friday night against Hull 2 weeks ago. We lost that game 3-0 at Bramall Lane. And we probably deserved to lose it 3-0. It was a really poor performance. Hull looked brilliant on the night, not taking anything away from them, but we were useless. And it really did start to think, oh, that's a big moment. But since then, Burnley have followed up United having this disastrous result by drawing twice. They drew at Leeds, good result, but then the draw at home at the weekend, that's a real problem for them. So despite losing 3-0 to Hull, we've gained a point. We're further ahead than we were before that game. And that's that's a massive sort of boost to all United fans, I think, because we thought the worst. We thought after that happened, we'll be down in third. We might even be fourth because Sunderland were right on his back as well at the time.
Sure.
But we got away with it. We've ridden our
Well,
luck.
it was the same weekend, wasn't it? Because Sunderland drew with Plymouth Argyle. And that was the day after your lot lost 3-0 at home to Hull. So it's a bit of a relief, really, that all the results seem to kind of go for you.
Yeah, everybody seems to have just not taken that opportunity because all season we've been waiting for United haven't lost very many games, but whenever we have, it's kind of been that we lost to Leeds, we lost to Sunderland, we lost to Burnley. Every game we lose, the other teams punished us every time because usually we were losing to them. This is the first time we'd lost a game to a team who I didn't consider a direct rival. I didn't consider a team that were looking for promotion. And so for us to not get punished for that felt like a huge momentum boost. It felt like everyone went, yeah, there you go. You've had a free shot now. And now it's on us to make sure we don't do that again. Because if we don't do that again and we don't have any more disasters, maybe it's not Leeds +1. Maybe it's Leeds and United. Good luck in the playoffs. It's difficult.
Absolutely.
Really difficult.
So in terms of where Sheffield United... Yeah, absolutely. In terms of where Sheffield United are at kind of performance-wise, there had been a feeling last time I spoke to you that, you'd kind of been sort of digging out results without necessarily playing that well. And it feels like a while to me, certainly from a neutral perspective, that Sheffield United haven't necessarily strung a good run of performances together for a while. And I imagine that's something you'll be eager to get back to.
Yeah, it's really disappointing. I mean, you can point to the reasons, particularly from Christmas over the New Year break, we were really struggling for fitness and availability. We got so many players missing. So I was kind of expecting a game like Hull because it had been coming for weeks. I was looking at the starting 11 and thinking, there's no way that this starting 11 is good enough to win a game in Championship. How are we ever going to get through this? And so it was a little bit frustrating that the game we actually lost came after we'd done the signings, after we'd brought in Brereton Diaz, after we'd brought in Cannon. It felt like we've ridden this wave. We've got through the battle. Oh, now the sucker punch has come. And then Derby, it wasn't a great performance. We've battled to a 1-0 win at a team in relegation trouble, but that's what we've been so good at. And I think almost that is the performance. The fact that we're giving up nothing. Like, there wasn't a moment when I really thought Derby were going to score. And that's the key thing for me now watching United. I'm not looking to see, are we going to dominate teams like Leeds? Because I just don't believe we're capable of that. We've got 30 games of evidence that we aren't going to dominate anyone the way that Leeds do. But what we do better than Leeds and better than anybody in the division other than Burnley is give the opposition nothing at all. We just don't let you create chances. We don't have chaos where the goalkeeper might chuck one in his own net. We've got to get back to that. That's the bit that's worried me since we lost Harry Souttar. It still worries me now, but games like Derby give me the confidence that actually we still have got this solidity, this confidence and this organisation in our defence that we can keep teams to 0.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think of Harry Clarke? How was his debut? He got forward for 1 or 2 crosses, didn't he, at Pride Park?
He did, yeah, he did all right. He's an interesting player. I think he's a good signing. I'm happy that we've brought him in. And I think actually it gives us a lot of strength down that right side. We'd clearly been looking for a right-sided wing-back. And wing-back, I think, is the key point. We've got a really good defensive right-back in Alfie Gilchrist. He's had a good season in terms of limiting the chances the opposition can create. He's been really good at standing up his man, not letting him get past him. But he looks tired. Mistakes had started to creep in. I thought he had a horror show at Hull, for example, because his legs just looked to have gone a little bit. And it was clearly a priority of the club to get an attacking fullback in, to play that role, to take some of the creative responsibility off Gus Harmer. And that's what I think we've gone for in Clarke. He did get forward. He was whipping in nice crosses. He's still defensively solid. He's still good enough defensively. But I think he's going to offer us so much more going forward that he's going to be a big, big player for us between now and the end of the season.
It's really interesting you've described Harry Clark as an attacking fullback, because when he was at Ipswich, I kind of felt like Leif Davis or Brandon Williams was the fullback that would be the one that would fly forward. And Harry Clark did a role, I would have said, similar to Gilchrist, actually, at right back, being quite solid and sort of holding his position. So I agree with you that I think he definitely fits into that defensive structure and is a great rotation option, and it does allow Gilchrist to play centre half to cover there when needed. But I wouldn't. I think of him as a solid fullback who can get forward, as opposed to an attacking fullback who can defend.
Maybe fullback, maybe attacking fullback is a strong term. He's more attacking than Gilchrist. He's able to get down his wing. His crossing looks to be just better deliveries. Gilchrist are just looped up into the box. Like, it's not a delivered, whipped cross. It's not one that you want to go and attack. It's I might find my man, but he's got to do a hell of a lot of work to put this in the back of the net. Whereas it looks as though Clark has figured out his delivery. He is definitely, well, I've only seen him for 90 minutes, but definitely looked more creative, more attacking, more likely to get forward than Gilchrist, and more confident on the ball. Gilchrist looks so limited. He looks like a centre half trying to get down the right wing. That just isn't something that happens very often, unless you've got Chris Basham, of course. But obviously, other than that, it feels like we actually do have a right back who wants to get forward, wants to get down the wing. Obviously, we'd hoped Femi Siriki would be that player, but his fitness issues have just meant we had to get somebody else in who can really cover that role and lock down that side.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I was really surprised on, just touching on before I bring in Jonny from the Roker Report, is the last game you played Tom Cannon, Ryan Brewster, and Ben Brereton Diaz simultaneously, along with Callum O'Hare. And it feels a little bit, to me, Ollie, like sort of striker overkill, where you'd probably want more play. You'd want somebody like a Jezra and Raksaki in there who can offer you a bit of width or something different, as opposed to having three players who they're all going to be trying to get into goal-scoring areas.
Yeah, I think the intention... So I think the plan, I'm not saying this is how it played, but the plan was Brereton Diaz on the left wing, Ryan Brewster on the right wing, Tom Cannon at centre forward. That's the way that we'd seen that playing out. It's the way that we'd wanted to try and set the team up. I think we are going to see Ben Brereton Diaz playing as a left winger for the majority of the season now. I think that's the position he's going to come in and play. I don't think you spend £13 million on a striker if he isn't going to play your central number 9 position. So I think Cannon is probably definitely going to be the striker. Brereton Diaz, the left wing. I would expect to see Jez Raksaki starting on the right wing.
Yeah.
Apologies. But I think this weekend, Raksaki's just not got fit. It's been such a long time since he's been fit that he's not been trusted. And so Brewster's sort of been asked to play a role that doesn't suit him. But when Gus Harmer's back, that's what I think is going to be most interesting. Because Gus Harmer's played left wing all season. Every game from the start of the season, Gus Harmer has played on the left wing for Sheffield United. Do I think that's the right decision positionally for where Gus Harmer should be playing? No, it's not at all. Because very clearly, I think we've got the best central midfielder in the division and we're playing him on the left wing. However, it's delivering results. It's got a really set style of play, and it has worked time and time again of getting Harmer on the ball in attacking positions to create chances. So I think it'll be really interesting, the decision we make there, because I do think Raksaki will be on the right. I do think Cannon will be at centre forward. There's a real question mark, though, on whether or not Brereton Diaz is going to be the left winger playing in a position that's semi-natural to him that we've seen him do, or if we're going to keep Gus Harmer out of position. If Gus Harmer isn't going to play on the left wing, then suddenly Callum O'Hare very much comes into question about whether or not he's going to still be in the side, or even does he sit deep, and is it a midfield 2 of Vinicius Souza and Gustavo Harmer, and those really exciting young players who've started coming through, like Siddy Peck, who's had a fantastic season, is he the one who's going to have to make way for this new selection of superstars we've got up front?
I've had to do a lot of mental gymnastics there, Ollie, to try and work out how the team's going to look. I mean, whether that's ideal, normally at this stage of the season, going into the last third of the campaign, you'd want to absolutely know your best 11. And so it's a slightly, awkward position, I suppose, that Sheffield United are in, but also in other ways, a testament to how you've kind of battled through with that kind of uncertainty. But for me, if I was designing your best 11, I think the fact that you've signed Hamza Chowdhury suggests Harmer isn't going to. So I think it's going to be Chowdhury and Souza in midfield. But what I would do, if you're asking me what I would do, I would probably play Gus Harmer as part of a three-man midfield with Chowdhury right central midfield, Sousa at the base, and then Harmer on the left for a midfield three, which wouldn't be too different from his role so far this season. Then I would play Raksaki on the right, Barton Diaz on the left, and then Tom Cannon up top.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans are coming around to that. I think the reason I think for talent and creativity and probably looking at a squad and saying that's your best 11, I agree. That's what I would play. I think that is probably the most consistent best 11, especially with Chowdhury and Sousa giving Hamer all the license to go and do whatever he wants. Because you've got two unbelievably solid defensive players there. Yeah. Chowdhury's a little bit limited on the ball, but you can just say to him, pass it to Harmer. All you've got to do is pass the ball to Gus Harmer when you get it. You run around, do all the tackling, and then pass it to him wherever he is on the pitch. And that feels like it'd be a really nice tactic. I feel really sorry for Callum O'Hare because I think a lot of fans are potentially coming around to the same mental gymnastics that we're doing, which is that actually in our best 11, he's probably the one who misses out. He's likely going to be a player who maybe has to get sacrificed to get the creativity on the pitch.
But do you know what, Ollie? Can I just come in there? Because I completely agree with you. I think you make a wonderful point. But then that's where I would say, don't be afraid to have amazing players on the bench. Like if you've got Callum O'Hare up your sleeve on the bench at championship level, that's a potential game changer, isn't it? So, you don't want to be kind of crowbarring into players into roles that don't really suit them. You want to have your best 11, but also have brilliant players who can, imagine at Callum O'Hare coming off the bench with his fresh energy, with his tenacity, with his ball carrying brilliance and the creativity that he can bring. I think I'd love to have him on the bench.
Yeah, he's a fantastic option off the bench. I think the reason I feel for him is I actually think his best talent so far this season has been energy and fitness. He has 90 minutes of pressing, of chasing, of harrying. It's sometimes frustrating that he's not always strong enough to win the ball when he's pushing somebody all the way. But he just never stops. And I think the energy he brings to United's attacking play has created so many opportunities for us. Whereas I think we lose that if he drops out of the team. Ben Brereton Diaz, I love the man, but he's not fully fit yet. He's still got some work to do. He's got to keep getting 90s under his belt. He's not covering the same distance. Jez Raksaki is not going to cover the same distance. Tom Cannon is going to be a bit more mobile in terms of pressing up front compared to Kiefer Moore. But again, he's not going to fully make up for what you're losing Callum O'Hare. So that's my only nervousness around that change is that I agree O'Hare would be an unbelievable option off the bench. I think he'd be fantastic coming on against a tired defence. And actually, his energy could be used more creatively than defensively as it is at the minute. But I worry about who's going to do his job for 90 minutes because he does it so well and it makes such a difference for our team.
Absolutely. Well, delighted to bring in now Jonny from Roker Report. Good evening, Jonny. How are you, mate?
Evening, lads. Yeah, not too bad. Bit nervous for this evening's entertainment coming up, but other than that, living the dream.
Yeah, Jonny, in normal circumstances, I think you go to the Riverside Stadium and you'd be very happy with a point. In terms of, I suppose the carrot is a bit stronger than the stick in this case because you're pretty secure, I would say, at this stage of a top six finish. So in terms of the top two, it's very much about chasing the likes of Leeds, Burnley and Sheffield United. And given that you did drop points last time out against Plymouth Argyle recently, is there just a feeling that actually taking 4 points from Plymouth Argyle and Middlesbrough, so you almost need to win tonight to kind of make it up a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. It's quite a strange dynamic between now and the end of the season, I think, for every game, really, where kind of like you've just said, normal circumstances, I'd say point away at Middlesbrough, I'll take that all day long before kick-off, happy days. But despite the fact that we've got such a massive cushion in terms of finishing in the top six, obviously, as we've just dropped points against Plymouth and particularly the missed opportunity at Turf Moor as well with the 2 penalties, it does weirdly make every game a must-win in a strange way, where because it's so tight, games where you normally take a point, all of a sudden they become that much more important, that much more critical in terms of getting that. Well, not even necessarily making the gap smaller between us and the other teams. It's just to keep pace. So yeah, I definitely think it takes on much more of a kind of an immediate urgency of we do have to win the game. And as you say, we'd have probably taken 4 points normally between Plymouth and Middlesbrough. So we've got to win tonight to make up for that. But yeah, it's just getting to that point in the season, isn't it? Where when you're in and amongst it, you absolutely just have to keep pace. Any time that you lose ground on your rivals, you've almost failed in a sense. So yeah, massive level of importance. But aside from that, I'm really relaxed and really just feeling chill.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point about sort of the importance of every game, because I've looked at all the fixtures and I'm like, other than when we the only games we've got left where I would take a point is Burnley and Leeds. They're the only two teams that I look at and I say, yeah, take a point, because I'm not losing anything by drawing to them. Every other game suddenly is if we don't win this, it could be a real problem.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, because we've got exactly the same, because our 2 toughest games left are tonight, and then we go to Elland Road in a couple of weeks. And so normal circumstances, I say tonight and Leeds, take a point all day. Now, like you've just said, all of a sudden it's no, win tonight, and then we can take a point at Elland Road. We can think about that when we get there, which is get the 3 points tonight and move on.
It's horrible.
Yeah, how are you feeling about the 11 for Sunderland to start tonight? And is there any sort of ambiguity or uncertainty over what that's looking like?
It'll be interesting, I think, to see the way that we set up. I don't think necessarily in terms of personnel, but more in kind of what shape we would deploy them in. We've kind of flitted back and forth between more of a 4-4-2 and then the traditional 4-3-3 that we've had for most of the season. But obviously we've still yet to have Romain Mundle or Tommy Watson come back to fitness on the left wing. And there's been rumblings about Tommy Watson. Is he going to leave to Brighton? Is he not? Like, what's going on there? So we still haven't got an out-and-out left wing option, which means more than likely Enzo Lefebvre is probably going to have to play there again. And
it's
then
not ideal, is it?
It's far from ideal, because he can definitely do a job there, but it's just such a waste of such a talented player to play them out of position.
Well, Adil Ceesay had to do it initially, didn't he, as well? So
yeah, exactly.
Isn't it, that you're going into the last third of a season having to play midfielders on the wing?
1,000,000%, but I think you probably lose less from him being out there versus Lefebvre. The difference in quality between being in the natural position and not, I think, is just amplified when you've got such a talented player. But yeah, I'd expect the personnel to be reasonably similar. There's been some people calling for Luke O'Nien to maybe have a couple of games kind of out of the firing line a bit in the centre of defence, which, I mean, anytime you doubt Luke O'Nien, he just proves you wrong the next game. So, I'm sure he'll start and have a stormer, but, that's maybe a conversation. But aside from that, I mean, the fullbacks pick themselves, the keeper picks himself. You're not going to drop Job or Dan Neil for a game like this. Slight question mark, like I said, maybe Chris Rigg, Lefebvre could come in and take that position and we could see someone on the left wing. But, by and large, I expect it to be a similar 11, but just to, we'll see what the emphasis is on come the sort of first 5-10 minutes of the game. Is it more of a 2 banks of 4 sit in and try and hit them on the break? Or are we going to, set up with that 3 and then another 3 and then try and kind of, play through them a bit more? But I'm glad it's not me making the decision.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you're encouraged by the recent link-up between Wilson Isidore and Elisa Mayenda, because that seems to have been a real route to chances for you.
Yeah, I think they've both looked so much more comfortable when they've played closer together and as a more orthodox front two. I think Mayenda in particular, I think struggles when he doesn't have bodies close to him. Not so much that he needs to just play kind of simple 5-yard passes, but I just think, we saw it with, he played the ball through for Isidore to win that first penalty against Burnley, I think. That was a great little pass and exploits the space. I think he did the same against Plymouth as well. It's just he's capable of those little defense splitting passes, but if you stick him out wide and he's got nobody within kind of 20 yards of him a lot of the time, then I do think you lose quite a lot of that. And Isidore as well, he's somebody who's just got pace to burn. And so if you get him on the shoulder, on the turn, running in behind, I think he's a real weapon. But if he's up front on his own and he's expected to do a little bit more of that kind of grunt work and like hold the ball up and the unsexy part of being a striker, then I think you lose a little bit.
Grunt work sounds quite sexy. So moving on. What do you think? I was surprised Abdel Samed sat against Plymouth Argyle because he's very much a defensive midfielder by trade with more of a destructive side to him as opposed to a creative side. There's a feeling that maybe held you back, and possibly it would have been a game to go for, say, a Lefay and Bellingham ahead of Dan Neil rather than having that defensive midfielder there.
Yeah, and that was something that, kind of amongst ourselves in, the group chats of Sunderland fans across the Northeast, we were all a bit baffled when he started. Not because he's a bad player and not because we should have been worried, as it turns out, but we weren't particularly worried about the game. It just more didn't seem to make sense. Like you say, he's such a defensive player. But I suppose you could argue the logic was maybe that it's a game we expected to be less intense in terms of having to cover that much ground in the middle of midfield. So maybe a good opportunity for him to build some fitness up after being out with injury the first half of the season. But yeah, I mean, particularly with the benefit of hindsight, it looks like a poor decision, I think. Although I wouldn't be surprised to see him play tonight. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him dropped or play, which is a bit of a, sitting on the fence kind of answer. But, this is much more of a kind of game where having someone of that profile, I think, makes sense. We're not expected to dominate the ball. We're not expected to make all the running in the game. So, I think it would make more sense tonight. But yeah, certainly left us kind of scratching our heads a bit pre-Plymouth to see our only real proper out-and-out six starting at home against bottom of the league. And he's never started against anyone else. It was a bit strange. But, I mean, hopefully by the end of the season, we're saying, thank goodness he got up to speed and contributed massively in the run-in. But if he doesn't, we'll all be looking back at that game and thinking, what was the point of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ollie, what would you like to? What not like's probably the wrong word, given that you're a Sheffield United
I can tell you exactly what I'd like.
What would you need
if you want, Gab? Yeah, I think.
What would you need to see? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think they're just in an interesting position at the minute, Sunderland, because I feel like it's been. I think they're in the most. Or arguably, and Johnny, I know you'll disagree with this because it's Sunderland at the end of the day, and that I understand all of that context and all of that position. But in terms of that automatic promotion race, I feel as though Sunderland can almost attack it the way that they've attacked most of the season, which is with a little bit of confidence, but also freedom. It's not a you have to go up or this is a disaster for you. We know that Leeds, if they don't get promoted, are potentially going to have some financial decisions to make. We know that United, if we don't get promoted, will have some very big financial decisions to make. Whereas Sunderland feel as though they're really not at the crest of their wave. If they don't go up this year, well, it's probably going to happen sooner than later because the right decisions are being made through the club. The right players are being brought in terms of the development of Bellingham or of Watson or of Rigg or of whoever's next off the production line because they've really got that development. So I think if I was looking at Sunderland and I was going to fully commit behind what they're going to do to get promoted, I would say that the decision to say play Samed is probably the opposite of what I'd be looking to do because I think they should just go and attack teams because I think they should go. And I know it's hard when you get to this stage of a season for anybody, but I think their biggest advantage is that they can play no fear football, knowing that the season's a success already. You've had a very strong season, a really good season. You'd back yourself if you're Sunderland over 2 games of football against most teams in this division. And so you can attack the automatics knowing that you've got a good chance in the playoffs. So I want to see them not having that sort of extra level of defensive, let's just make sure we don't concede, let's just shut this down. I want to see them go the other way, really attack teams, really go after games. Because I think, A, that's their strong suit. It's what they're best at. It's where they're going to be most effective. But B, I also think, as a fan, it'd be the best way to watch your team try and do this. I don't think they're going to out-defend United or Burnley, so you've got to try and do it another way.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jose Mourinho's Chelsea might struggle to out-defend Burnley this season, so I don't know how much joy we'll have with it. Yeah, I think you're partly right and partly not right. The reason I think that you're partly right is because the season is a success no matter what from this point, basically. Unless we totally capitulate and somehow miss out on the top 6, which, fingers crossed, touch wood and all that won't happen. If we get playoffs, then we've succeeded compared to finishing 16th last year. That's just undeniable, I think, to anybody. But
cut him off, Gab, before he does the partly wrong.
the reason I would the reason I would take slight issue with part of what you said is because, yes, we're not like in a financial crisis if we don't go up. It's not going to be a meltdown. We're not going to be falling off a cliff next season, in theory. But I do think if we don't get promoted this season, I think all of a sudden Joe Bellingham's eyeing up Premier League clubs, or he's eyeing up Borussia Dortmund, or he's eyeing up whoever, and I think they'll be very, very keen to come in and take him away. I think Chris Rigg probably starts eyeing up, there's been reported interest from the likes of Man United, Arsenal, clubs like that. I'm sure clubs on the continent would want him. If we're in the Premier League, we have a sort of twofold advantage. One, they might want to stay, but two, if they do leave, all of a sudden you can demand a higher price just because you're in the Premier League. It slaps an extra, 10 million, 15 million on value sometimes for players. So it's not, it's not the end of the world if we don't go up. It would be kind of hold your hands up. We gave it our best effort and we just came short. But I do think it would be damaging, but it wouldn't be the kind of damage that you don't recover from. Because like you say, we've got a development pathway pretty clearly established and good recruitment, which I think is, they're focused on more than just the next 6 months at any given time.
But Jonny, I think as well, that's kind of, you've kind of got to trust the model as well. So I think if you didn't go up this year, it would mean that you would get, I think you could get, even in the Championship, I think you could get 9 figures worth of money for some of your talents if you sold 2 or 3 of them. And I know fans never like to think like that because obviously you're a fan, you want to see your best players on the pitch. But also I think that that money could do a lot. It could give you a huge budget if you're able to invest some of it on the pitch. So I'm excited about the future. I think the model's done really well for you, and credit to Christian Speakman, really.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Sorry to cut you off, but Christian Speakman deserves so much credit. I mean, you still see the kind of slower to adapt fans, shall we say, on social media being very, very vocal about, well, what's Speakman doing and this and that, and particularly when Clark is sold or Stewart is sold. But yeah, the man in the main has done an absolutely phenomenal job. Just look where we were then and where we are now. It's brilliant. So please continue, Ollie. Sorry.
No, and I think that's the point I was going to make is that, we're talking about this and we're talking very, because that's the nature of football. You're talking seasons. So we're now talking who's going to get the automatic promotions, who's going to be celebrating in 4 months' time. If we project forward 5 years, which of these 4 teams do we think has possibly got the best chance? Who's got the highest ceiling through this development? United, you're saying, well, new owners, do we know what way that's going to go? Do we know how much they're going to have to invest? How much they're going to be able to put in? How much they're going to stabilise? No, there's a question mark. Burnley, do we know what they're going to do? We've seen them go to the Premier League. We've seen how that's not played out. They've come down, gone up. Leeds, probably, you'd say, look best set to immediately get there. To say next season, if they go up, they're probably well set to give it a real good go at staying up. But in 5 years, I'm looking at Sunderland and I'm thinking there's potential there for them to be the team that stabilise in the Premier League. That they can, if they keep making the right decisions, if they keep the youth pathway coming through with players of the talent of some of these players who've come out of it, suddenly you're looking at a team that could be the team that you then say, well, look at what Bournemouth, look at what Brighton, look at what Sunderland did. And that feels like a slight difference from where some of the other teams are. Because I talk about United, I talk in seasons. This season, we need to get promoted because the money makes a huge difference. Next season, we'll finish bottom. But the season after that, maybe then we'll be able to have a go because the money will have made a difference. And we almost talk transactionally I accept that United are probably going to persistently do this. Whereas I think Leeds and Sunderland are the two you look at and you think, actually, if they do this, they might do that. And I think that's a really strong position to be in. And that's why I'm saying that I don't think that desperation or that pressure should be there. And they should play no fear football this year. Because I think, it's the best thing that suits the squad and is the best way for them to succeed. But I think actually, long term, they're in a really strong position to be the team that make it. And not many teams make it at the minute, as we're seeing currently when you look at the Premier League. And somebody who won the FA Cup 4 years ago is still going to do exactly the same thing as everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point, though, because it's basically exactly what we did 2 seasons ago when we made the playoffs under Tony Mowbray. You know, we basically just went out every game and went, well, we'll see if we can score 3 goals. And if we do, we'll probably win. And if we don't, oh, well, you know, we've only just got promoted from League One. That's all right. And I remember that a lot of us, what we were saying at the time as Sunderland fans was kind of, well, I almost don't want to go up yet. Because if we go up, then, yeah, we're in the Premier League and the money's great and we might scrape survival. But really, you looked at that squad and I think there were holes kind of all over, really. We just weren't ready.
Luke O'Nine's not a Premier League defender.
No, he's not. And I love him with all my heart for everything he's done for Sunderland over the past, you know, whatever it is now, getting on for 8 years. You know, the guy's fantastic, but we couldn't have relied on him in the Premier League. He'd have just been found out immediately. Whereas, you know, now 2 seasons down the line, if we go up this time, I think we're in a great place to really, you know, put a case forward for staying up and maybe, you know, looking as high as 14th in the league, something insane like that, you know, those heady heights. But I think it's basically exactly what you're saying, Ollie, is you can't just look at it like season by season. That's such a good point. Like, if everyone had looked at it on that basis 2 years ago, we'd have all been devastated and crying and the club's finished because we didn't get promoted. Whereas really, I think it set us in good stead for the next few years. You know, you build a base. Then if you go up with a squad that's either capable or near enough and kind of ready for the challenges. Whereas look at Ipswich, promoted and then immediately promoted again. But they've spent a load of money. They've brought in players from, you know, as many different clubs and countries as you can think of, and then, you know, where we at February in the relegation zone. It's because the gap's just enormous and it only gets bigger. So, yeah, I do think you absolutely bang on with the kind of short-termism a lot of fans have just isn't reflective of the reality of modern football.
Yeah, well, brilliant stuff. Jonny, thanks so much for joining us and all the rest for the rest of the season, mate.
Cheers, pleasure as always, lads.
Cheers.
Enjoy.
Delighted to now bring in Scott Worrall. You can follow Scott's excellent work on YouTube at Scott Worrall as well. Delighted to have you on, Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Wondering, how are you feeling about Leeds United after that 7-0 thumping of Cardiff City?
Well, I mean, I'm delighted with it. I mean, I think that was our best win since 1972 or something. So, you know, these sort of games only come around once every nearly 50 years in our case. So, yeah, absolutely delighted. And I think we're in a decent spot right now, although I'm sure the transfer window will dominate all conversations right now. And I don't think we've quite done the job that potentially the teams have done. But I think we've talked about this before. I think we're in a better position, probably the squad wise, than the other teams are, sort of. So they're catching us up a bit, but hopefully not quite there.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose one thing I'm really curious about is the form of Junior Firpo, because he got 3 assists at the weekend. And I'm just wondering, with a more creative midfield sort of next to him in the likes of Tanaka and Joe Rothwell, whether it's actually a bit easier for him to kind of get that sort of whip on those crosses, and, you know, which were just beautifully weighted to the back stick. I think he got a couple of assists like that on Saturday in a way that maybe we didn't see to quite the same extent last year.
Yeah, no, I think Firpo coming back's massive for us because we've played Byram there, and Byram's quite a good utility man in terms of he can do a job in a number of areas. Right back, he's probably going to be an 8 out of 10. Left back, regardless, in the same sort of breath. But I think obviously with Firpo, he offers that sort of ability to overlap that Byram don't. We play a bit different than we play with Byram. He sort of inverts, and then the winger usually goes on the outside. Whereas obviously with Firpo, it's a more sort of traditional way of doing it in terms of Solomon inverts inside, and then obviously gives the room for Firpo on the outside, which I think helps both players. And we saw the sort of the benefit of that at the weekend, really. With obviously he got 3 assists, and he was absolutely superb down the left hand side. And to be honest, I think he is. I don't like the phrase, but it's probably like a new signing for us. Has been out for a while now. Comes back in at left back, provides that sort of, as I said, the ability to use a left foot down the left hand side, which is a nice benefit, and probably adds to the balance of the team really. So yeah, I think he could be massive going forward. But he has got a bit of sort of contract discussion at the moment because he obviously is out of contract in the summer, and I'm sort of tossing and turning between giving him a new contract and not really. But yeah, he should be massive for the balance for sure.
It's so. I think it's great to. Well, it's not great from my perspective. It's horrendous, and I really wish he would. It's good to hear that sort of balance because I think that's one of the things that we talk about a lot about Leeds in terms of some of their defending at times, or in terms of some of the sort of issues that come up throughout the season. Sometimes it does come down to balance and that feeling that there's always a potential weak area, and it does feel like slowly but surely every gap gets plugged as you go through the squad and goes through the team. That does leave, I think there's probably two areas last time we spoke about it. We were just coming into January and we were looking at the goalkeeper and the centre forward position. We were starting to say, do we need to get a new goalkeeper? Just give Darlow a go. Do we need to get a new striker? Since then, 4 clean sheets and Pirot has scored 5 goals, I think. He just keeps knocking in the back of the net. Do you think it's still an area? Are those two the still areas that you're thinking, I wish we'd done something? Or do you think you have got enough, even with them being maybe question marks?
The clean sheets thing's all fantastic with Meslier, but I know what he's like. It's yes, we have kept clean sheets, but it's in terms of an individual performance, we just don't concede shots really. Like I don't think we conceded a shot on target against Cardiff. We didn't concede a shot on target against Norwich. I think we might have conceded 1 potentially against Sheffield Wednesday. And then it was quite a basic save. I think he just pushed it around the corner. So. Yeah, we've kept a lot of clean sheets recently, and obviously we kept a clean sheet against Burnley, but again, they didn't have a shot on target against us either. So yeah, I mean, I'd have probably played in goal and got a few clean sheets. So I don't think that's an upgrade on Meslier and sort of that he's been fantastic. I just think that's a sort of what you get when playing in a Leeds United team. I think you could bring probably a keeper out of League Two probably and generally get quite a few clean sheets. So yeah, I still think we need a goalkeeper. We don't seem to want a goalkeeper. It's sort of baffling me, and it has baffled me for the best part of well over a year now why we don't need a goalkeeper. And it's weird in the fan base because we keep a lot of clean sheets. It's sort of people like after the whole game, I think he was like the target man. Get rid of him. We need a new keeper. And then he doesn't have any shots to face, but we keep a few clean sheets, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's fine again. It's not an issue." And it is a problem. It's a complete problem. The only thing I can say is, and I think this is where we're at with all the signings, really, is that it's a tricky. Leeds are in a tricky market right now, and Sheff United are in the same breath, where we've got a summer budget of maybe 120, 130 million if you get promoted potentially. I think that's what we're all hoping for. Big spend. Any money you spend now, you can't then you've used your summer budget potentially. So you buy, say, like we've looked at Cameron Archer as a striker position, for example. But we don't want to pay an obligation to buy because do you want to buy Archer in the Premier League for 20 million? Sheff United tried it, didn't really work. Do you know what I mean?
You want an option to buy, don't you, Scott?
That's what I mean. So I think that's where we're balancing with it. I think, and that's why, to be honest, I've looked around at business. I don't want to criticise people's business, but I didn't really want Cannon. To be honest, he's better than what we've got, but he's not better enough to the point where it's worth it. And so that's sort of where I'm at with it, and I think that's probably potentially what they're doing with the keeper. But I think the keeper's different because you could have got a keeper so cheap that it seems like I don't know. That one seems the most ridiculous one, but I think that's where I'm at with it really.
No, I think it makes sense. I think that is I've reflected a lot on United's business this window. I think we had to do it. Because I think to get over the line, we needed to put this work in, and we needed to bring in those players. Because we're
Ollie, do you think you're done for the window, by the way, just on that? Or do you think there's going to be more on deadline day?
No, we've got 2 or 3 coming this evening. I'm almost certain of it. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we've got work to do. We've still not signed a centre-half, and if we go into a centre-half where we've only got Jack Robinson and Nell.
What's happening with that? Because you meant to be signing Holding, but you haven't used all your loan spots. I don't really understand what's going on.
So you can have 5 in a match day squad. It's not that you've got 5 loan spots. It's that you can have 5 in your match day squad. So we are recruiting. He would be number 6, but it just means that they all can't play at the same time. So somebody have to drop out so that he can come in. They say it's going to be Rob Holding, and I started today. You need
a centre half that's going to start every week. So one of your loans is going to have to drop out, aren't they? So I don't really get that.
And Rob Holding's not going to start every week. That just ain't happening. Like I'm looking at what we're doing. And it's not
Anna Robinson though. I know we're on about Sheff United here, and you've got me on to talk about Leeds, but I don't know. I don't really get it. But I think the Jimmy Dunn made a lot of sense. But yeah,
I do agree, and United need a centre-half. We're really desperate for one. Obviously, we brought in Harry Souttar earlier in the season, and we did that because we really wanted to be solid, compact. We were so bad defensively last year. We had to do something to change it. And I keep quoting this stat because it blows my mind. When Harry Souttar has played 90 minutes, stood next to either Anel or Jack Robinson, we've conceded 0.3 goals per game. We're on well, not anymore because Burnley have continued keeping clean sheets. But up until about Christmas, we were on the exact same track as Burnley. Like when Harry Souttar played, we didn't concede any goals at all.
Yeah.
When Anel and Robinson play, we concede 1.3 a game. Like it just consistently goes in the back of our net. So there's work to do in terms of recruitment. I woke up this morning and someone said, you're in for Japhet Tanganga. You've gone in there. You're trying to get him out of Burnley. You're going to put in this offer. And I said, yes. That's the difference between finishing second and finishing third. About 4 hours later.
Not either of them, I think, that if Tanganga or Dunn would have been fine. But I don't really get neither. And Holding, don't really get it. But I mean,
when someone said to me, you've got Holding, he's the next one coming in, I said, that's the difference between finishing third, finishing fifth.
From an outside point of view, and I think Leeds fans will be interested in this. Do you look at Leeds and think we've sort of like caught up to them with our business, or do you think that we're still sort of in a better position? Like, because a lot of Leeds fans are panicking, going, they bought him and he's bought him, and we're not buying anybody. But my stance has sort of been that we had a better squad regardless, so everyone was just trying to catch up. I don't know where you lot are at with that.
I don't think anybody unfortunately, there'll be United fans watching. I'm so sorry. But I don't think any player we've signed starts for Leeds. I don't think you'd look at your team and go, any of these players start, other than maybe Cannon at centre forward.
Oh, Ben Brereton.
And that probably answers the question.
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure Ben Brereton Diaz starts over Solomon or Dan James.
But would you put him up front? I don't know. He can play up front.
Yeah,
one of them. You might play one of the two players at centre forward, but I don't think you'd take any of the others that are coming in. And, we're talking about Rob Holding and two wingers from sort of Europe who we're not sure whether they're coming to start, whether they're coming as development signings. I don't think any of them you'd be sort of screaming at yourselves about. So I think for me, that probably answers the question of, I still think your starting 11 will be significantly better than anybody else's in the league. And I think we've signed to keep us above Burnley.
When we went up last time, in the January window, we signed John Kevin Augustine, who basically didn't play, and the less said about it, the better. But ended up costing us 40 million quid, and we signed it in Pervada. And neither of them did anything to help us get promoted, but we still went up anyway. Liverpool in the Premier League, I know it's a different scenario, but they're not buying anybody, and they didn't really buy anyone in the summer except Chiesa. So I know why Leeds fans are tetchy, because that's what we are. We've got a song, as I said, that the song about us saying that we fall apart every year. So I do get it, and I get why people are worried. But there's not a lot of signings that other clubs have made that I've been that worried about, to be honest. And that might sound arrogant, and it definitely does. And I apologise to the viewers for that. But right. Like Harry Clark, I don't really want. I don't know, Chowdhury, I don't really want. Like all these players, I'm not that interested in. I've got to be honest with you. So. Yes, I would have liked like a statement. I thought we needed potentially number 10. So that would be nice to get a nice number 10 in. I think Wendy we looked at for ages, but obviously when Bailey doesn't come knocking in the Champions League, we're not exactly going to get him. But I think potentially that could have happened in a similar way that Enzo Lafay ended up going to Sunderland because of the connection with the manager. I think, and maybe Marcus Edwards has obviously gone to Burnley for a similar reason. So that'd have been nice to get that over the line. But obviously that never now it looks ridiculous that he's ended up with there. And obviously Archer would have been. I'd have really liked Archer, and obviously a keeper. But if it wasn't like a statement player, I didn't really get. For Leeds, that wasn't appropriate for me to start going and buying some of the players that the other teams have had. Even Edwards that's gone to Burnley, I don't think Leeds needed. But I still think he's a top level player. But I just don't think he was. I don't think we needed a winger. So I don't know. It's been a really tricky window, I think, for Leeds, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of the window. My slight I don't want to sort of do the goalkeeper issue to death, but that's the one reservation I've got, because you've got 5 games coming up, and I talked to Ollie about this at the top of the pod. 5 games, all against teams who, to different extents, still have promotion ambitions. So Coventry are an in-form playoff contender. Watford an out-of-form playoff contender, but they've still been in the top half all season. You've got Sunderland at home, you've got Sheffield United away, and you've got West Brom at home. Those are all tough games, and there is potential for drop points there. And I think it is fair to say that in most of those games, there's potential for Ilyan Meslier to come under a lot more pressure than he has done so far. So I'm wondering if you'd had these kind of games, potential drop catches. I'm wondering if you'd had these kind of games in January, it might have sort of forced Daniel Farke's hand in terms of bringing a goalkeeper. Whereas because you've had games where you've kept clean sheets without him being tested, it's kind of the issue's gone away a little bit. But I wonder whether that could be a red herring.
I think that's a completely fair point. And to be honest, I think Sheff United over Christmas time did have a run like this where they played, and for Watford, they played Sunderland near a bit earlier, but and you played a few others, didn't you? I think you played Burnley as well. And we're now hitting that run that you had, and we had a lot of easy games. And to be honest, I think we're in a nice position, currently top of the league. But I think when you look at it, we dropped points at Hull in ridiculous circumstances. We threw it away against Blackburn in the last minute. We've thrown away games, and I think if we could have got a few more points, I expect over the next few weeks that Sheff United pick up more points than we do, just because of base of fixtures, to be honest. So I think in 5 games time, there's every chance that Sheff United are ahead of us, to be honest. But it's just keeping that gap to second to third, should I say, at the moment, with Burnley hopefully continuing to draw 0-0 all the time, which I think they might do against Oxford actually. But yeah, I don't know. I am still a bit concerned, to be honest. I don't think we're going to run away with it, which I think we potentially should have done, but I just don't think it's going to happen for whatever reason. So I don't know. I still think we're well in the pack. I think there's potential. I think I've seen other sort of Sunderland fans and Sheff United fans and all that saying that sort of they're in a race for second and Leeds are going to walk away with it. I just don't really have the same confidence at Leeds, to be honest, because as I said, we've thrown away points in bad positions. We've got, as you said, a run of 5 quite tricky games, 3 of them being away where we've struggled. I actually think the Sunderland at home game and West Brom at home game I'm quite all right with. I think we'll be all right in them games. But going to Coventry, I'm really nervous about midweek. That looks bad to me. That's got every sign of a bad game. It's Frank Lampard. They're flying. They score loads of goals. If they go up early, I think we could be struggling there. The Watford one I'm not as worried about, and then obviously Sheff United speaks for itself, the second in the league, and we're going to their place. We've got a terrible record at Bramall Lane as well. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully we can have our Chris Basher moment. Let's say, but yeah, I think I want to see where we are in a few games' time, to be honest, before I start say anything mad. If we do win them all, though, I'll be on Cloud Cuckoo Land, and I'll be in stars. But yeah.
Absolutely. Talk to me about the form of Dan James, because he's one who's it's hard to say that such and such a player has been Leeds' star player, because it's not really how it's worked. It's like there's lots of players who have been 8s and 9s out of 10 for Leeds this season, but Dan James, if I had to pick one, he's been just such a live wire with his pace in behind, and he carries such a threat, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, he absolutely kills people at this level with his sort of pace. And he just Cardiff couldn't deal with him at the weekend. I mean, he got 4 goal contributions in 66 minutes. I mean, it's just outstanding. It's funny actually, because actually probably on technical ability, he's probably the weakest we've actually got of the 3. But he's got an innate ability to sort of get the best at possible out of his actual ability, which is a skill in itself for sure. And we've seen that the way he uses his pace, because some players are faster, they don't have to use it sometimes. He's fantastic at making runs in behind, which opened the whole game. But the first goal against Cardiff is a ball in behind that he can just latch onto because of his pace that no other player one of the only players in the league that would have got onto the end of that, because he just nips him before the keeper gets it. So yeah, he's got an innate ability to get the best out of his attributes, which is nice. But I think there's a part of it as well. Yes, James has been fantastic, but James was like this at this point last year, and sometimes it can, with players that are doing like James is, sometimes I don't know. I think it couldn't always fire like it is right now. And I think back in the last season, obviously Nonto came back into the fold, and in January last season, everyone was saying we should sell Nonto, and then he becomes the right winger that we need. So I don't know. I'm still open to I want to keep all 4 of them, obviously. But yeah, James, there's no doubt. James has been, especially in recent weeks, him and Solomon on the wings have just been incredible, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just wondering then, Scott, how many points do you think you'll get from those 5 games that I mentioned? I think Ollie said he'd be surprised if you got fewer than 10. Would you be surprised if you got fewer than 10 points?
Yeah, I would be. I think I think the home games, the Sunderland and West Brom at home, I think we'll win that game. We've won, I think, 12 out of 13 at home, and last time the one was against Blackburn when we drew in the last minute, and we were winning. Obviously, we scored in the 9th minute ourselves, but yeah, I do think the West Brom game will be okay. Sunderland will be tricky, but I think again we'll have too much from probably at home. Coventry, where I think we'll probably win at Watford, to be honest. And then I think them other two are probably a shootout. I'm not sure on the other two, but I'd be surprised less than 10 points. I think that would be. I won't be happy with that. If I looked over the next 3, I think if we got 7 out of the next 3, I'd be particularly pleased. But yeah, it's the away games. I mean, it cost us last year. The away performances. Ellen Road's just an absolute fortress. It has been since Farke's come. I mean, it took us to the last game of the season, I think, the Blackburn game at home, near on the second last game of the season to actually lose at home last year. I know we've lost 1 this year, but we've only lost 1. So, yeah, as I said, that's never going to be an issue for us. And I think we'll end the season with the best form at home in the league. It's just if we can keep it up away from home. But the likes of Watford, you've got to go there and win with the form they're on for sure, like Sheff United did. So yeah, I think that's where I worry a bit. But I'm hopeful for sure.
Interesting. Okay, well, listen, Scott, it's been great to get your insight and look forward to catching up later in the season.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully Leeds are still the top of the league and in an advantageous position, I guess.
Let's hope so. Cheers, Scott.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Gabe. Cheers, Ollie. Bye.
So, Ollie, unfortunately, we haven't been able to speak to a Burnley fan this evening, but based on what we've heard from Jonny and from Scott, anything to sort of change your mind on either Sunderland or Sheffield United, or Leeds, sorry, anything to sort of stand out there?
No, I think Leeds. I think Leeds are such a funny one because I think everybody who isn't a Leeds fan thinks they're the best team in the division by an absolute mile. Yeah. And everybody who is a Leeds fan goes, that don't matter, we'll not go up anyway. And every conversation I have is always, yeah, we know we're best team at league, but we're not going to go up because that's just not what we do. And I think I can see that. And I think actually that probably plays into some of that sort of tentativeness, some of that drop point, some of that nervousness that just runs through the fan base a little bit, maybe affects the team. So maybe I'm softening a little bit on whether or not they'll win the league by 10 points plus. I still think they will win the league, but I'm hearing this noise of maybe they're going to win the league on the last day, 3 points, 4 points. Maybe it's going to be closer than I'm expecting. I think the thing that stood out to me most is how much Scott, and it might be because I'm sat here and I get that, but he seemed to, when he was talking about their results, talking about their points, talking about the gap, he's talking about United. I get the sense from him that what he sees as the threat is Sheffield United. I think that seemed to be a little bit different because I think Burnley, I still think, I don't know who Sheffield United are going to sign to play centre half. If we sign Japhet Tanganga, we will finish second. If we sign Rob Holding, I think we'll finish third or fourth. I think it makes that big of a difference in terms of who we're going to have playing there. And so I think there's a lot of work to do in the next sort of 5 hours where United need to get themselves the team that they want to be. But yeah, I've listened. The Leeds fans are infecting me now, and I'm starting to think that maybe there is something in this. Maybe they aren't going to just run away with it and sort of storm on. Sunderland, I can't know what to think. Are you still bullish on Sunderland?
Yes,
you had a top all the time. You've always committed Sunderland are the ones.
I'm in too deep now, Ollie.
Because I'm struggling at Sunderland because they are fantastic to watch. I think they're a brilliant squad, a group of fantastic players. But I just don't see, and maybe it's just because I've never bought in. I've never fully been on the Sunderland train. And so I keep expecting it to turn off at the next junction. Like, there's an exit coming up. I reckon Sunderland.
Do trains turn off?
I've mixed my analogies, Gab, is what I've done there.
If you said you're on the Sunderland bus, that would have made more sense.
I should have got on the Sunderland bus. Instead, I've got on the train, and I'm shocked that they're staying on the track. I'm like, come on, jump it off, guys. Let's end up in the woods. So I still think it's United or Burnley to finish second.
Yeah.
And as I say, depending on who United signed to play centre half, depends what my prediction is. I think we've had a really good window. I think we've got in just about everything we need, but we need a centre back. And so if the centre back is, as is being widely predicted, Rob Holding, I think Burnley will still finish second, even though Natalie's not being here to convince us.
Isn't it funny how the next 5 hours could have a massive bearing on the automatic promotion race? Because if Sheffield United sign a centre-half that you don't think's up to the level, and if Sunderland lost at Middlesbrough, that would be a massive step forward for Burnley. But then if you sign Jaffet Tanganga and Sunderland win at Middlesbrough, all of a sudden it's very much a 4-horse race. So, the next 5 hours are huge, aren't they?
Yeah, it really is. I think it could be one of those where you look at it as a defining day because there's so much that can happen. And they've obviously Burnley have brought in Edwards. I think that's a fantastic signing. I really do like a lot of the business they've done. I looked at them selling John Egan and I was sat here thinking, shall we have John Egan? So we get the band back together, get John Egan in at centre half because he might be a better option than Rob Holding.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what I mean? I think you could be a very good centre half at Burnley and not play just because of how. I mean, it doesn't matter how well you're training, Ollie. If you're a Burnley centre half that isn't Maxi Mishtev or CJ Egan-Riley, you're not starting.
Do what you want, lads.
Exactly. It doesn't matter in the slightest. So, I do feel for John Egan and all the various centre halves at Burnley, and various goalkeepers as well. Not getting ahead of games.
I feel sorry for everybody at Burnley because if you're a striker, you're sat there going, "Is anyone going to get me the ball?" And if you're a defender, you've got no chance of getting in if you're not Egan Riley, Trafford, or Esteve.
Can you imagine, the backup goalkeeper at Burnley knocking on Scott Parker's door to say, "Hiya, Gaffer."
Get me in, Gaffer. Come on, it's time.
Can you give me some feedback on my training performances that's likely to make a bit of a difference to me going
into Football Manager press conferences, or you're getting all the notifications coming up? So and so's unhappy they've not had the agreed playing time. What do you want me to do, lads? Come on.
Absolutely. Right, Ollie, great to have you on as always. I know you've made it clear that you're very much on the Leeds bus. For top spot. If I had to push you for a second pick,
I'd much rather answer this question tomorrow. I'm gonna say it's Burnley.
Oh, there you go. Okay, interesting.
And you're Sunderland and Leeds?
Sunderland and Leeds, yeah.
Consistent all season, Sunderland and Leeds.
Absolutely, yeah. Sticking with it right to the bitter end.
You've got to, like you say, Gab, you're in too deep now. You're stuck
exactly,
there. If you change, it's a slight on your personality and we'll never forgive you.
Exactly, yeah, absolutely. Brilliant stuff. It's been great to have you on as always as co-host, Ollie. Thanks to both of our guests for this evening as well. Thanks to you for watching at home. You could do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify.
Blow a kiss for the fans.
Exactly. There you go. I've loaned you the kiss, so now you've got to get subscribed to us on YouTube and Spotify. EFL Debate it is. This has been the Championship Podcast, and we'll see you again next week.